Age of Empires 4 is coming out in just a few days, and with it we'll have the opportunity to spend endless hours building 4-layer deep walls against AI on its easiest difficulty, reliving our childhood once more. For some, coming back to Age of Empires is a decades-long journey, and for others, they've been playing the series consistently up to this point. Either way, there are a heap of mechanics to get used to when you get your hands on the game come October 28th. In this video today, I want to quickly go over all 8 of the factions or civilizations that we have access to on launch. This isn't exactly a guide on how to play each and every faction, nay, that will be coming later. Rather, this is a guide aimed at giving you an idea of which civilization you want to plug into first, from easiest to understand to hardest. I'll quickly be touching on the overall feel and mechanics of each one, giving you a loose rundown. I do encourage you, though, to try every civilization regardless, because although the English might be mechanically the easiest and most forgiving, the Mongols might just jive better with the way you play RTS games or what have you. If this is your first time on my channel, the way I like to do things is upfront the knowledge within to help you determine if this is the right video for you. You can also scrub through each of the chapters in the timeline or description to jump to the part that, just has the most interest for you. With that being said, I'd say that the English are the easiest faction to get into. In fact, the game's tutorial campaign is playing as the English, well, the Normans, but still, and it allows you a very strong amount of safe tech upgrades, a strong farm economy, which is relatively safe food source, amazing archers, strong men-at-arms, just an overall safe and strong faction, with most of its landmark buildings being keeps that act as amazing defensive buildings for resource expansions that also produce units. Now, the hardest faction would have to be the Mongols, because it doesn't play anything like the other civilizations. You don't harvest stone, you generate it, allowing you to produce double units for the cost of stone if they're produced within the certain range of a certain building. It's a really kind of just terrifyingly complex faction at first glance. It's also a faction geared around harassment, so with that, you have to be comfortable with a strong build order to get your economy running quickly, as well as microing your units so they don't just get killed. Because they're all very relatively lightly armored units, and they aren't the strongest at the start. They do become stronger, but it takes some time to get there. So keep in mind, this is my anecdotal experience, but the rest of the civilizations then color all the spaces in between, which we'll go through here today. If you end up enjoying the video and you're looking forward to more Age of Empires 4 content, please don't forget to like, comment, and/or subscribe. I cannot tell you how much that helps any content creator you watch. I have a huge amount of videos geared towards helping players like myself that are not so great at multiplayer, are used to playing the AI, and want to get a leg up on their game so they can eventually join the world of the multiplayer competitive scene. All those videos are planned and coming up here. But let's get started here on ranking the Age of Empires 4 civilizations from easiest to hardest. So to start us off, the easiest faction is the English, and it shows you kind of that they're focused on defense, longbows, and economy. And they really do shine, especially towards the latter portions of the game in the final 4th age, where their farms will allow them to produce gold, which becomes a very scarce resource at the time. Also, all of the ability in which to produce farms is easier. They cost 50% less wood, they're near mills, so they actually generate more food faster, 15% faster, and they get the ability to make men-at-arms at the first age, which is a really nice defensive capability, because this allows you to break apart a lot of the early rushing that you might deal with say, spearmen and the such. In addition to that, they get a very strong network of castles ability, which allows for a 25% increase in attack speed of town centers, outposts, towers, and keeps. Let's jump now into the game, though, to show you how that all kind of comes together. And before we jump to the latter ages, this little guy, the Vanguard Man-at-Arms, is a pretty important character. So you hover over this and it gives you a lot of information about them, and they get a nice little bonus to both melee and ranged armor. Now, why this is nice in the first age is it's going to be a deterrent towards anyone trying to rush you, especially if you're dealing with Mongols or any of those factions that will want to use spearmen, archers that are on horseback like the Khan, or any kind of horsemen to do some initial rushing, because they will actually have some armor defense against it. So it's not going to completely shut down a rush, but you'll be able to trade into things way more effectively with these Vanguard Men-at-Arms. The only other faction that gets this bonus is the Holy Roman Empire, so they are a really strong, nice touch. In addition to that, in Age 1, you'll also have the ability to make these mills. Now, as you can see here at the bottom, it says influence, farm harvest rate increased plus 15 20, 25, and 30% by age while within the influence of a mill. And this becomes even more powerful at age 4 because it allows each farm to produce 1 gold. And like I said, gold becomes a scarce resource towards the latter portions of the game, so it is a very nice boon early. But let's now advance to the 4th age to get a better idea of how this works. So now that we're in the 4th age, we can really take a look at a lot of the advantages that English has. Of course, here is the elite longbowman, which has the ability to set up these stakes in front of them, allowing them to absorb, well, just that one little guy. When you have a whole unit, they put up a lot more. This allows them to absorb charges from cavalry, which would otherwise be used to negate them. They're a really, really cool unit. In addition to, they can upgrade to set up camp and heal themselves, which is great. In addition to, their men-at-arms get even better. Now, remember what I was saying with this being a defensive faction? Well, this is the first building to progress up to age 2. And this is then your standard keep. Now, not every faction gets the ability to make units from a keep. That is very unique to England. And with this allows you to have a lot of coverage and safety in your expansions. And since the expansion building for age 3 can be a keep if you just had to go with the defensive landmark, or again, the Berkshire Palace again is another keep. So you have access to so many quick and easy keeps as a means to upgrade your civilization through the ages, which is quite nice. Lastly, though, is what I was saying in the intro of this portion about the network of castles. Well, that can be upgraded. So when you see this big circle here, that is the network of castles. Any unit in this range will get a 25% bonus here. So we'll hover over this and it says increases the network of castles attack speed bonus from 25% to 50% by upgrading to network of citadels. So if you get access to this or you take this technology, your units will be having a nice 50% attack speed bonus while they're within this radius. So you can really see that this is a very strong defensive faction, and it's very forgiving because it gives you a lot of tools to play with in the very beginning portions of your journey into Age of Empires 4. Next up is the French, and while they are an easy faction to understand, they are by no means a poor faction in any way, shape, or form. Same thing goes with the English. The French has the ability to take off economically very quickly, because you can see here faster villager and scout production per age, that increases from 10 to 20% at the very top. Then economic technology is 30% cheaper to to research, which is lovely. And making the drop-off buildings have a little bit less of a cost of wood is a very nice way to get a lot of early expansion. But the biggest thing here too is melee damage techs are researched for free, which saves you a lot of gold, and you will be getting a lot of gold as France because their trade posts are revealed on the mini-map from the start of the game. Another big boon that the French has that's not listed is probably the strongest early game naval units in the game. If you have the ability or you are starting on an island-based map in a competitive multiplayer game, playing as the French is a great way to have the ability to shut down the enemy in the early portions of the game so that you can monopolize all of the trade routes and the fish production on the map. Let's jump into the game and kind of show them off a little bit. And here we are in the game right before age 4. So while France is known as really this strong cavalry faction focusing on a lot of shock cav doing heavy damage, they still do have a very good unit in the Arbalest here, the Arbaletier. And this character can do a lot of damage to heavy units, which is again very, very cool, very good boon. And when we took a look at the little opening scroll that said, hey, you know, they get free research for melee, that is not so kind of evident when you take a look at the game. So if I click on the blacksmith and I go here to the melee damage technology, it still has the price associated with it, and then it says requirements age 4, the Imperial Age. So I'm going to finish making my landmark over here, and we're going to see what happens. We'll look over here on the right side. And there you go. See, Damascus Steel completed. If I click back here, it's already done. So it makes it seem like you have to pay for it, but you just simply have to advance the age, and it automatically gets you the increased damage on all of your units, which is a really strong boon. In addition to, you can see the map right now is revealed, unfortunately. I pressed that when I went to the game, totally forgot about it. But these locations where the trade posts are would be revealed but shrouded to me if this were a standard game. I'd just be able to send off my traders immediately. And this is a very nice boon because the further you are doing a trade route, the more gold you'll get. And as I've said before, gold becomes a scarce resource. And the nice thing with the French is the ability to get more than just gold from trading. This continues to help you steamroll that economy and keep it very strong. Lastly, one of the other big things I wanted to talk about is the Hulk. Now, this is an Age 2 naval vessel, and all other Age 2 naval vessels, for the most part, are just simply arrow ships. This bad boy has a ballista that it's going to shoot from either the left or the right side of the ship, and that is super strong. It's not very fast, but it can destroy transports and other arrow ships very quickly. So France is really going to be your cavalry and your economy powerhouse because it has so many different ways to just leverage that massive economy. Like I was saying, all this is reduced in its cost. So this would normally be, these two would normally be 50. They are at 25. So it allows you to recruit them a little bit faster. And two, what we were talking about with the English was, hey, this is a keep that the French have. And as you can see, it cannot make any units. So just to kind of reference back on our English portion of the video, this shows a keep from another faction not being able to produce things. And one last thing to highlight here with the French is their Royal Institute, which reduces the cost of technologies. So if we go ahead and hover over here, influence unit production costs reduced by 20%, so it allows you to get off the ground quickly with your inflated economy with a nice military. Hence that aggression. But they also get Royal Institute Landmark reduces research costs by 25%. So all of these researches are going to be a lot cheaper for you to do, and all of your unique ones, while housed in their respective buildings, can also be accessed quickly here by the Royal Institute. So France is going to be the faction you want to play if you want to do a aggressive cavalry faction that also has amazing trade benefits as well as research boons. Next up is the Holy Roman Empire, or the HRE for short. And if the English are focused on longbowmen or archery, for example, and the French are focused on cavalry, the HRE are heavily focused on infantry. Their men-at-arms have the ability to wield maces, which have them do damage into armor from a very early stage in the game at the feudal age. In addition to that, what's going to be different here from the other two factions we talked about is they're going to really focus a lot on relic play as well as using their prelates or their religious characters to get those relics that will give them a lot of bonuses. So for example, here you can see garrison relics inside of outposts, keeps, and towers to improve their sight range, weapon range, armor, and damage. Also, putting the relic inside of a dock will increase the attack speed of all ships by 5% per relic. So 5 relics will give you a total of 25%. In addition to that, this is also a defensive faction, so being able to make any of the emplacements or the upgrades to outposts, wall towers, and keeps has been reduced by 25%. But let's jump into the game to show how some of that is exemplified. Now, jumping into the game here, we can see some of the units for the Holy Roman Empire, and nothing has been upgraded at all unit-wise. But taking a look here just at the early men-at-arms, when you hover over them, they have the standard profile of any men-at-arms. They have a little bit more armor than, say, the Vanguard men-at-arms that we took a look at with the English, but they get this at age 2. Usually you have to wait until age 3 or 4, depending on your civilization, to get access to men-at-arms. So what's further awesome about this is they get a lot of upgrades for all of their infantry units. So for one, they can get riveted chainmail, which is going to give 3 armor to their spearmen. Here's just your standard spearmen. Even if you were to upgrade them, they would not get 3 armor, which is significant. In addition to that too, they have these 2 abilities. So either heavy maces, which gives them a +6 to damage, and I think that actually confers to 4. It's 2 more damage, but then 4 damage towards heavy. And then this other one here increases their damage by 2, but also gives them an armor piercing ability, as I recall, that is lower than that of the mace, but it does more damage to everyone. So you kind of have to choose, do you want a come-all unit or one that focuses heavily on anti-heavy armor? And by doing that, it's going to swap out the armament here on this Holy Roman Empire men-at-arms, so they can be a little bit different, a little bit more of a kit style, whatever you want, or whatever fits better for the opponent you've got. In addition to, they have got these guys, which are light melee infantry, and they've got this Zweihander. And the Zweihander here, it allows them to basically do damage as a splash around them. So one-on-one, they're probably going to lose, but one on like 3, they'll do damage to all 3 units that they're attacking. And their strength of using these guys is mixing them into and around your men-at-arms. You have your men-at-arms meet the enemy on the front line, and the Zweihanders come in between, and they'll do splash damage and kill things in droves. They do a ton of damage, as you can see, at 17 melee. And that's really the benefit of playing the HRE, are these very modular, very strong infantry units. Now, in addition to that, we did talk about the prelate and pretty much their religious focus. So they get an ability here called Holy Inspiration, which is going to increase the resource of your gatherers, of your villagers, and he'll automatically do it. You can see he's just casting on these 2 right here, but this can be further upgraded. And the nice thing too is the prelate is accessible from the first age, the Dark Age, but he can use stuff like this: inspired villagers construct 15% faster, or this one, inspired villagers gather an additional 10% in resources. And then this last one, inspired warriors, improves those military units, improving their armor by 1 and damage by 15%. So again, driving home that point here. Now, one thing too that the little tooltip we take a look at in the beginning doesn't exemplify our show is the emergency repair mechanic. So here's my like makeshift little ramshackle town here, and if I click, let's just say a house, you can see that there is this big, huge, like yellowish aura everywhere, right? And you can see I can increase it with my buildings, but if I'm outside of it, I don't get access to it, I don't get influence of it. And the way that this works is your town center starts with an initial aura around it. And as you build more buildings, it adds to this. And that allows them to have emergency repairs. Take, for example, these 3 buildings out here. They are not within my aura. And this is going to become important when we talk about the Delhi Sultunate or the Abbasids. If I build this building, it's going to extend the aura and connect them and turn on emergency repairs. What are emergency repairs? Glad you asked. It's right here. It says what it says. Building repairs itself by 150 every 1 second for 20 seconds. So it's what, a total of 3,000 health regenerated for a building, which is quite nice. Of course, some buildings don't have that much. Every second for 20 seconds. So did I do that right? 150 times 20? Well, either way, you get the point here. So you can see that this is a faction very heavily focused on infantry, and they get so many abilities towards it. Even if you jump to the blacksmith here, they can increase the movement speed of their infantry. And their defensive structures, like this bad boy right here, this defensive landmark of the Elsbach Palace, allows them to reduce the amount of damage of everything in its aura, this big, huge, basically the same one as the emergency repairs. But if I click on these buildings, you can see the 2 influence that is happening here. The town center influence allows for emergency repairs, and then the buildings take 33% less damage. So you can really grow this aura to be very strong and defensive as you make more and more emplacements. Like I said too, you get to stuff like this, increasing the health of walls, towers, and gates by 40%. So very defensive faction, very infantry focused. And if that is what you're about, you're definitely going to be off to the races here with the Holy Roman Empire, especially with buildings like this that allow you to recruit in batches of 5 for your infantry. So you don't have to produce a ton of buildings, while you can just use this guy to get batches of 5 out at a time. It's very, very strong and very unique. The first 3 factions we've talked about in the English, Holy Roman Empire, and the French, all are very standardized factions. There's nothing terribly crazy about the way that they play that breaks the standard AoE formula. Well, everything going forward now has something that really changes the way the game plays, or just kind of mixes up the way you do have to execute a lot of your build orders, so on and so forth. And the first one on this list is the Chinese. Now, this does say this is a 3-star difficulty, and if you kind of click through this, it shows you all the relative difficulties. Like Rus, for example, is a 2-star, but the Chinese says 3. I personally find the Chinese to be a little bit more user-friendly than the Rus, and a little bit more accessible, because the Rus has a lot more micro-intensive mechanics. With that in mind, though, the Chinese have a lot of really cool stuff. So villagers construct defenses 50% faster, and all their buildings 100% faster, which is cool. They have an official that's going to walk around and generate gold from all of your buildings, which is interesting. They also get the chemistry technology immediately when we get to Act 4. I mean, Age 4. Been playing too much Diablo 2 Remastered. And also docks work 20% faster. They also have a little bit of a bonus too when it comes to using fishing boats, which we'll take a look at. And they have a very unique dynasty mechanic that allows you to build both of the landmarks to jump from age to age to get further benefits. Or you can just kind of focus on one, whatever you want. Let's jump into the game now and take a look at how the Chinese play. Before we get much further, let me just show off the dynasty mechanic and how this works. So it essentially allows you to fall into one of the 4 dynasties, Song, Yuan, or Ming. And this will allow you to have access to certain abilities, certain benefits, certain bonuses, but it will require both buildings from the respective age in order to jump to that dynasty. So what this really means is that previously you just build one of those buildings. With the Chinese, you either build one and stay at the dynasty you're at, or build 2 to unlock that dynasty as a flex point to be able to jump into them to either counter a specific play style, whatever it is. So you can see here too that you're going to get some really nice crossbow units for this one and increase maximum population by 40. This one over here is going to give you the Fire Lancer, and then you have got the Granary, which is villagers can drop off food at this building, improves the farm gather rate of nearby villagers by 15%, generates tax each time a resource is dropped off. So basically, it's very similar to the way that the English have their mill setup. Then you get the Grenadier, who's going to give you some nice area damage, and then the Pagoda, it was just a relic, can be placed in the Pagoda, generates 50 food, wood, gold, and stone every 30 seconds. And then obviously you get your benefits at the top here. These two may be focused a little bit more on your villagers, but this one giving you bonuses to both officials and military units speed, and then the units gain 10% health with the Ming Dynasty. So we'll show this off at the very end, but it's worth showing right now. Okay, now at the 4th age, we can take a look at some of the other things that the Chinese get access to. So they do get a unique man-at-arms, and I know we talked about how the HRE is just the premier man-at-arms and the best of the infantry, but they get Palace Guard for China, and they get some pretty interesting capabilities. They don't get really, anything crazy when it comes to armor or anything like that, and they can't really break open armor with really high armor piercing, but they get this Guandao, which allows them to do 12 melee damage. Now, this is nice, and it will work very well against very lightly armored things, but as soon as it hits a lot of armor, it's going to get neutralized as far as its effectiveness goes a little bit. But the nice thing here about them is their ability to really hold the line as you progress them up into elite and battle hardened status. This gives them a whopping 30 more additional health, making it 200 for just the standard Palace Guard, which is quite nice. In addition to, they get the Clock Tower Nest of Bees, which is a destructive, and this is probably going to go really poorly, a destructive unit that replaces the Mangonel for the Chinese. It does so much damage to units in mass, which is the point of the Mangonel. And also, this is one of the dynasty-specific units. They get the special Zhugnu, which are a crossbow unit. If you hover over them, 3 burst attacks, which is pretty nice, and then 4 repeater crossbow bolts that'll be shooting out of them. Now, we talked about the dynasty mechanic and how this works, and you can see here that we are in the Ming Dynasty, and previously I was part of the Song Dynasty. And as long as you build both of these buildings, you will then be able to unlock that respective dynasty and get its bonus. But you cannot jump to a previous dynasty until, well, this is not going to be an until, but you then in the top of the line here at the end of age 4, you can make the Spirit Way. This will allow you to make previously achieved dynasty units. Keyword there, previously achieved. So I did not do the Yuan Dynasty, and as a result, I will never get access to Fire Lancers in this playthrough unless I were to reboot this game and make this, and this, and it would give me access to everything here. If you it's a little confusing at first, but just kind of staring at it a bit, it'll click. If I take a look then at my worker, see I can't make this building anymore. Requirements Yuan Dynasty, requirements Song Dynasty, so on and so forth. Oh, that's the Wonder. But if I click on this, it'll show me requirements Yuan Dynasty or Spirit Way and previously unlocked Yuan Dynasty. So because we've locked out the ability to make Fire Lancers at the top end of my basically spree here. Even if I were to do this, this is the Imperial Palace. I'll hit finish. This is the only way I can then get access to the Yuan Dynasty because it kicks me over into the Yuan Dynasty. And that way I can get access then to the Fire Lancers. So the only way to do it is if you build these buildings out. And if you don't want to do that, you won't have access to these units ever again. So that's the kind of important thing about China, is making sure that if you want any of these specific buildings or units, you either are in that respective dynasty, you've already accomplished that dynasty, and then you have built the Spirit Way. This will now allow me to make this, the granary. And I misspoke earlier. This will not create the same effectiveness of the English farms. This will allow the gather rate of nearby villagers to increase by 15%. I totally read into that wrong, and I'm stupid. But another big thing that the Chinese have are these officials. And you can see I've got 4 of them active right here, and they'll go around and they're going to grab gold, which is nice. Passive gold is a really strong benefit, and you can find this in a lot of the more, not top tier, but more advanced civilizations in Age of Empires, because like I said before, gold is so hard to come by. And if I look over here, I can see that this is accruing gold, and that imperial official is going to walk up to it, snag some, take about, what was that, like 20 some odd gold, bring it back and turn it in, and he'll just keep doing this. And gold accrues depending on the location at a rate of whenever that location gets action. So this is a drop off point. Every time something is dropped off here, it will get 1 gold. Because it's next to this Imperial Academy, it increases it by 100%. So 2 gold per drop off right now. As you can see, boom, boom. And this also happens for military buildings. So if they drop off right here a gold, then they're going to increase that to 4. So this is not being benefited by the Imperial Academy. So Chinese have this really cool ability, and it's really worth highlighting because you can get a lot of early gold fast, and it allows you to tech up quickly because they can also build buildings so fast, allowing you to push through the ages quickly. And they're the only faction, or one of the only factions, that get access to a defensive landmark that has to be built into a wall right here, the Great Wall Gatehouse, which is really, really cool. I do like it quite a bit. But that covers the Chinese here. So again, if you want a faction that's going to be able to push through the ages very quickly and have very specialized, but also somewhat of a kit when it comes to its bonuses and its specific military units, then China is going to be the one for you, because again, you can focus, hey, you know what? We're going to go with this because we're going to be dealing with a lot of condensed infantry. Or, you know, hey, we're going to go with this unit because it's just going to do a lot more area damage, and it's going to be great at destroying any kind of archers and stuff like that. Or maybe, hey, we're going to go with this because, again, we're going to deal with throwing more explosives and getting more damage in there. Whatever you want to go with unit-wise, but more importantly, the bonuses that you're going to get, as well as all the units, because they have a really nice, strong roster. And I think that that's the nice thing about them, is that all their units, for the most part, will be your standard fare with very little specialization, except for, of course, their men-at-arms, which are going to be quite different, and their crossbowmen, which will be quite different. But nonetheless, China has access to a lot of different things. So if you want that level of selection and option ability to counter pretty much anything, China will be the one for you. All right, we've hit that midpoint, and now we're going to talk about the Rus, one of the first civilizations or factions that really has a lot of mechanics that really differ from the way that you would normally play Age of Empires. And the big thing here with the Rus is their hunting cabins. These hunting cabins are going to generate gold for them. They're going to also help you out because you need to generate gold when you hunt animals, which will also help you out with food. Also, you have these wooden fortresses that are going to help you increase your lumber yield because you get very strong wooden walls, or palisades as they're called. In addition to that too, the Rus has a bounty mechanic wherein the more animals you hunt, the more food income you'll get, and we'll show that off in the game in just a second. And lastly, I was talking about this in China, but it's here that the fishing thing is active. So fishing ships don't have to return to a dock to drop off food. For some reason I thought it was in China, not Rus. But let's jump into the game and show off how the Rus play a little bit. So coming into the game, we can see 3 of the more unique things about the Rus. For one, we get the Warrior Monk. And what's really nice about the Warrior Monk is that it allows you to have a religious unit on horseback. And that is a huge advantage. So all of these icons across the map, they can go and snag them very quickly and bring them back to your temple, your monastery. And you can start to get gold from them, everything. And they also have this increased blessing here. Now, let's take a look at that specific blessing because they get Saint's Blessing. So after striking an enemy, the Warrior Monk increases the armor and damage of nearby allied Rus military units for a duration. So really, this guy has some amazing support potential outside of just being a healer and an individual that will convert units for you. It's a very nice boon. Attack-wise, you know, he's got 11 melee spear damage. He's got no armor and a moderate amount of health at 190. So he will need a lot of support, but you can see that as he's in the fray, he's going to be boosting up your military. The other unique unit they get here is the Streltsy, and the Streltsy are very cool. So they've got this ability called static deployment. So basically, as long as they aren't moving, it's going to increase their attack speed by 10% and damage by 3, stacking up 3 times to a max of 30% and 9 damage. And looking at their normal profile, 9 more damage onto that 51 hand cannon brings it to 60. And we talked about this before with other hand cannon generic infantry. The hand cannon itself doesn't do any kind of armor piercing damage, right? It's not going to bypass anyone's armor, but it will do so much raw damage that their armor is really not going to mitigate enough damage to make worthwhile. So take, for example, a heavy men-at-arms with 3 or 4 armor. It's really still going to, if this thing has got its 60 damage coming out, that's still what, 56, 57 damage hitting it hot and heavy. So that's quite good. Now, the other thing here is just the Knight. Now, this is fully upgraded, but the Rus get access to 2 technologies that allow for their cavalry to be quite strong. So this one increases the health by 20, and then this one increases their damage by 4. Now, we talked about the French and how they're a very strong cav force, of course, right? But the Rus have some of the tankiest cavalry in the game, and that is quite nice because they also get access to horse archers. They have the standard fare of spearmen and men-at-arms. So a nice wide variety of a lot of different units. Even when it comes to siege engines, they get a nice wide variety, the normal amount that you would think, plus a lot of unique technologies with that. Now, outside of the units, the big thing for the Rus is their bounty mechanic and how it really works. So if I hover over this, it tells me the 3 tiers of bounty, 100, 250, and 500. And that will increase by 5, 10, or 15% the food harvest rate of my villagers. And it will also increase it'll decrease the amount of time until my hunting cabins generate gold, which we'll show you in just a sec. At the very bottom here, it shows you that sheep, deer, wolf, and boar, and what their respective bounty value is. And what's even nicer is this little guy right here. This is the tier 3 or age 3 economic landmark high trade house. It will generate deer every 60 seconds. And it also acts in and of itself like a hunting cabin, generating 200% more gold every 27 to 15, what it depends on what bounty you're at, right? 27, 24, 18 seconds. And this is nice because it gives you a consistent way to increase your bounty, a safe way to get what are these called? Deer, and a great way to get food. Now, the big thing that makes Rus very kind of difficult to maintain is that, of course, they can make farms. Of course, they can hunt sheep. It's great and good and all, especially in the early game, it's safer. But you're going to be spending a lot of time as the Rus trying to find these little deer patches unless you make the high trade house, to really be focusing on microing your villagers to get this food source and thus also this gold source, because everything they kill, they're going to get gold from. And like I said, they'll get 10 gold per deer that they kill. That's going to be added into the bounty list here. And on top of that, they have these hunting cabins. And that building we looked at acts as a hunting cabin, but you can see the circle right here. And this circle will take the amount of trees in the circle, and it will add that as a per minute amount of gold that you'll get. And it tells you right here, this is generating gold for you, but the max gold you can generate from all of your cabins is 250. So you just have to be aware of that. You can't go over that amount. So if one's not generating enough, you can just delete it and have one that's generating more, whatever it is. To kind of further exemplify this, I've put some in some different areas. So that one over here generates 21, and I actually counted out the trees. There's about 21. This one's generating 16. But this little guy is generating 1 because there's just 1 tree in its range. That is how you deal with the hunting cabins. In addition to that, because the Rus do not get any stone buildings, they don't get any ability to make stone walls, they have to focus on their fortified palisade building and their fortified palisade gates. They also get this wooden fortress. Now, the wooden fortress is important because it increases the lumber yield you get, right? Lumber camps and town centers within the influence of a wooden fortress return 20% more wood. So when I click this, you're going to see that wooden that camp right there is outside of the range. I can go ahead and pop it in, and I'm going to be getting now 20% more wood for anything at this lumber camp. So you're going to be relying really heavily on wood for your defensive structures. So that's why the Rus have the ability to really monopolize wood production. But I know this all seems very simple, but when it actually comes to play, you will be playing a very erratic game of constantly making these hunting cabins in portions of the map that you might have no interest in harvesting wood. You just need the gold. In addition to that, having to move your villagers around to places to hunt these deer is going to be very dangerous unless you decide to make this little guy. And the other age 3 building is also very good. So it's a very hard toss up between the two. Now, the other little thing that the Rus do get to is their ships, their navy. So this is the Lodya, I think it's Lodya actually, fishing boat. And this will get to 40 food, like a normal fishing boat, and then it will just put it into your bank. It doesn't have to go back, which is really cool because it is a modular ship. At any point, here's an attack ship, I can switch this to a fishing boat. Takes 20 seconds, takes some resources, and boom, it is now a different vessel, so on and so forth. So it's a modular navy that can't really go beyond just using a demolition ship and a archer ship, which is unfortunate, but it has the ability to just be a mobile navy that can then immediately redeploy into an economic force that is getting you food. So the Rus is a really strong faction if you like having a lot of unit variety, right? You're going to have a lot of good infantry. You're going to have great hand cannons and horse archers, but also very stalwart cavalry supported by some warrior monks. So if you like that kind of mentality of trying to keep a pretty mobile force, while at the same time relying a little bit more on some heavy mechanics with your wood and your food, you're really going to enjoy the Rus. I mean, personally, it's my favorite faction next to, I think, the French. So take that as it were. All right, number 3 now on this list is the Abbasid Dynasty. And these guys aren't necessarily very difficult, but there is a lot to manage with the Abbasids because they have this golden age that they have to constantly be working with and making buildings in a tight formation pretty much around this overall aura that you have to constantly be increasing. And in addition to that, they don't make a standard building for progressing through the ages. They make an additional house or a wing on top of this house of wisdom. And I'll show that in just a little bit here. In addition to, they really focus on berry bushes. The same thing with the Delhi Sultanate, but you'll find that their big focus is on research, anti-cavalry, and the Golden Age, as it says right there. But let me show you how this all comes together in the in the actual battle map, because they have a lot of really cool, fun anti-cav camel units that are quite awesome. And a perfect place to start is with the camel forces I just talked about. So here are the camel archers, and both camel units get this thing called camel unease. Camels cause horse cavalry units to deal 20% less damage. So this is very huge. This is how that kind of anti-cav comes to the fore. And also the damage profile of these guys. So they will do 10 just native bow damage, but they'll also do 20 more damage versus light melee infantry. And what is light melee infantry? Spearmen. That's going to counter these camels, right? Well, not if these guys are shooting them apart to begin with. And even if they try to countercharge you with other heavy knights, you have got these guys, your camel riders. They still have that same unease thing. They've got a lot of health at 270, which is nice. But look at that, plus 18 versus cavalry with their swords. And these guys are, of course, not even upgraded at all. They get plenty of other upgrades here and also in the blacksmith themselves. For the rest of their military, it's pretty, standard fare, but that's not a bad thing. It just means that they can shut down spearmen and other cavalry units very quickly with their unique camel units, and then they can kind of drive it home with their own knights, or they can use any of the siege engines, including the culverin, which as you've seen, not a lot of factions get access to, but the Abbasids do. So that covers the units here for the Abbasids, and also it's kind of worth noting that they get a really cool little ship. I couldn't think of the name of it off the top of my head. I'm like, what is this thing? Zebek there. But the big mechanic and why they're such a complex faction really kind of comes down to their mechanic here in the House of Wisdom. So the House of Wisdom has this nice little aura around it that extends and creates this. And it gives +5 fire armor, which in and of itself is not too crazy. But anything built within it contributes to this, the Golden Age. And the Golden Age either has 10, 30, or 60 structure tiers, in which it will increase gather rate by 10, 15, or 20% for all resources, research rate by 15% at tier 2 and 20% at tier 3, and then lastly, production speed by 20% on tier 3. And it's tricky. So it means you have to have a very dense, tightly packed layout. And you can see I've kind of done that here to help exemplify some stuff. But before I show that off, They also have all of their landmarks are built into this building. You're adding another wing to it. It's pretty cool here. So you can see trade wing. This is going to progress us up to the next age, and we'll be all, well, actually, I'm sorry. The first 3 progress you to the next age. Then you can build the last wing as you see fit. So we'll go ahead and build it. And the downside to that is that you can't contribute to the speed of this. You can't use more workers to progress you through the ages quicker. You're just going to have to take its course. So that is an unfortunate part of it. In addition to, each one of these wings, you can see, adds 3 technologies. And those 3 technologies correspond to this over here. And there's a wing here, 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 and here that you produce, and their corresponding technology is consecutive, right? So this is for all the first, I think it's the economic wing, then you've got the military wing, then the culture wing, all right here, and then the last one here is the trade wing, and each one of those. And this will unlock, okay, this is all on the feudal age, the castle age, then the imperial age. It's all nicely put in order. Also, you get unique, unique technologies here, especially this one, phalanx, increasing the attack range of spearmen, making these spearmen for the Abbasids some of the strongest. Again, lending itself to that anti-cav notion that they've got. So back to this golden age. And like I said, there's this aura and everything's got to kind of be built within it. And it's just like we've seen in previous factions with those auras that kind of exist. You have to connect things. So if I press this outpost, you can see I've got my whole main base is one aura. The secondary base is another aura. And here's why this is so tricky. If you make an expansion, that's not going to be connected to the main branch. So when I press this button, you can see that I'm going to connect both all my houses and all my main base. And you watch the right side. Boom, that jumps us up to gold tiers to tier age 1 and 2. And it says that it's reflected right there. We're 8 buildings short of tier 3. Now, this expansion that I've made for this video, I've kind of had to build stuff over to it so that it can allow it to join in on that golden age. I have to build another building here. Here, actually, I'll make a bigger, larger building. There we go. And that connects it. So that will then add it from 52 up to 55. So that is going to be a kind of trying thing to deal with as the Abbasids, is making sure you have these connected portions of your empire, more or less, right? Because while you can make, of course, stone buildings that the Rus could not, you have to make sure that you can also defend this wide, huge network of buildings that you're using. So using outposts to connect stuff and upgrading them is going to be key, stuff like that. And one of the last things too is berries. When you make a mill next to berries in this, well, aura, let's actually go down here. You'll see that this was going to increase the yield. And constructing the mill near berry bushes increases the amount of food available by 100%. And they'll make, as soon as this is built, they'll kind of make little like fences around them, and then they can go and harvest those. So they do get a nice, safe form of food, and that is quite nice because you are going to be spending so much time trying to make this huge, sprawling empire that can take advantage of this golden age, while at the same time staying up to date on a lot of your research. So there are a lot of moving parts to the Abbasids. It's very tedious, but I think that once you wrap your mind around them, it's going to be a faction you really enjoy if you want to shut down heavy cav play and have your units kind of free of a lot of that harassment from, say, the Mongols or any other heavy cav faction. Now, next up is the Delhi Sultunate, and this is a faction that is really a late game bloomer. It takes a lot of time to get off the ground, and it relies very heavily on the ability to research things. But the nice thing about it is their researching is completely free, just comes at a slower rate, and they get access to scholars at age 1. And this allows them to increase their research rate by using these scholars and placing them in buildings, garrisoning them, so on and so forth. Now, the same thing that the Abbasids got with the berry bushes, the Delhi Sultanate does as well. And the unique thing for Delhi is that they can construct defenses as a normal infantry unit. I forgot to mention this with the Abbasids, but the Abbasids can construct siege equipment like siege towers, battering rams, and whatnot just natively. They don't need to research a specific technology for it. Delhi gets the ability to produce a wall, for instance, if it's just an infantry unit. And lastly, fishing ships equipped with archers to help any kind of early game rush against your food economy on any aquatic quote-unquote map. Let's jump into the game and show them off. So here we are in the game with them, and you can imagine Delhi Sultanate is all about elephants. And these elephants are very strong. They're slow to produce, And it takes them about a minute, minute and a half, and it takes them a substantial food resource. It's 600 or so for them. So it's quite the sink here, but they're very strong. So look at this war elephant. Does 30 damage in melee and 20 with its spear, but 40 versus cavalry. So it's really going to be stomping through things. In addition to, they've got the tower war elephant, which is even stronger in my opinion, because it does that 30 damage, and then it also has 2 archers on top. They both do 15 bow range damage. But what's nice is that you can upgrade this unit, I'll click it right here, to have a siege elephant. So now the tower elephant will have elite crossbowmen as riders instead of archers. So men-at-arms that are attacking this, even heavy knights, are going to be getting shot by those crossbows that are going to be doing damage against that armor, which is quite nice. Now I did say that the infantry units of the Delhi Sultanate can produce defensive buildings. So basically they can make this, the palisade and the palisade gate. You have to get this landmark, the compound of defenders, to make stone walls, gates, and towers on all of your infantry units, which is actually a very good boon. So you can see that right there. And I can't tell you enough, like, these elephants are awesome and they just stomp the opposition. But Delhi, like I said, Delhi Sultanate, its big focus is on scholars, and they have got these buildings here that allow you to garrison the scholars within them, and the scholars will then help out in the production of all of your research. So take a look at this aura, just like we had for the Abbasids, right? So anything in the place of this aura, and placing things increases the size of it, will get this boon. So if I take a look at, here, this will break it out. So the way the scholar research works, that anything in a mosque or in a madrasa will give you 12.5% increased research rate for every scholar within the building. So this over here, the specialized pick, it doesn't cost me anything, but it only costs me time. And because I've got so many scholars, it will actually be a quicker research than it normally would had I not had any in here. If I take all these guys out, go ahead and just ungarrison everyone. Yeah, so you can see right there. So that was 2 minutes and a second. Now it is up to 6 minutes and 15 seconds. So that's your trade-off. Free research, but it's going to take a long time, and you're going to have to use these scholars to maximize that research as best as possible. And you can see you press this, and it's just going to go ahead and go through its paces. And you can see too, active research items. And the nice thing here is certain buildings will give you bonuses based off of how many total active researches that you've got. So it's important to have that. Unlocked researches. 2, which is also very important here, is how the scholar can work. So you have this ability called Zeal, which units healed by scholars gain 50% attack speed for 3 seconds, which is really nice if you have in the front line healing things, but they get this thing too, efficient production. Scholars will increase the production speed in military buildings by 100%, allow scholars to capture sacred sites before the castle age, and they generate more gold, increase the sight range of scholars, and then lastly, the movement speed of scholars. So that's a very nice set of abilities. In addition to, you also have this thing called the Tower of Victory, which will increase the attack speed permanently of any ranged or melee infantry that run by it. So you can see that the Delhi Sultanate is really about stacking as many benefits as you can and using a lot of these support elements to support your big bad elephants, because those are going to be the things that are going to crush your enemy. If you want to play a a faction that doesn't really come online into the latter portions of the game, then Delhi Sultanate's going to be for you, because you're really worrying about building tall. Like, I don't have a huge sprawling location. I'm really focusing on trying to get my research out. Of course, you want to go for your resources as you normally would with every other faction. But after that, it's all about trying to maximize your production, trying to use your scholars with the military you want to have in mind, or the research you have in mind. And a lot of your landmark buildings are going to be a huge boon to your faction. This one right here, the last one, there we go. The Palace of the Sultan will produce war elephants. I think it's every minute if you've got 4 in there. So I'm getting free war elephants by just simply having that building made. And that is really, really strong. So like I said, as soon as you hit that late game, this faction takes off. It just takes some time to get there. And also, real quick, it is worth noting, the fishing boat here does have some low damage arrows that can be shot from it. So this is, again, the Delhi Sultanate, and I think you'll really enjoy this faction if you want more of a tall faction that is focused off of a late game strong performance than a lot of those other factions that focus really on the early game. And since you do have to worry about your late game, this is why I put this at number 2 on the list, because you have to have good build orders, you have to have good management of your resources and knowing what units to make when you will get rushed. So that's why your infantry units can build out defensive buildings while your workers are doing work for you. If you pull them off of the supply line, it's going to hamper your ability to progress to the point in which you actually take off above other factions in Age 4. All right, the hardest one on this list, the Mongols. And it's because they play completely different than every other faction. At their core, sure, it's about assembling the same amount of buildings, but doing so is very weird and difficult. You have to do a lot of overlapping benefits with some of their buildings. It's really strange. But they start with maximum population, so you don't make any houses. All their buildings can move, which is really huge once we talk about the Ovu. Also, they are a really strong early game rush faction. It's what they really focus on, is trying to put as much pressure on the enemy from the start as possible. In addition to that, they plunder 50 food and gold by igniting enemy buildings on fire, so it really forces you to get out there and do a lot of damage to these buildings so that you can kind of get a little bit of an upper hand on your economic boost over your opponent as you try to harass them. The big issue I have with Mongols is if someone hard builds a ton of spearmen against them and archers, it can be a really hard time. So you have to get out the gate immediately rushing and doing damage to your opponent. So let's see what they look like in the actual map. So with the Mongols, you're going to be getting a lot of what you would expect, a lot of horse archers. You start the game with this guy called the Khan. And the Khan, if I hover over here, you can see that he is really good. He is basically your scout, but he's not just a scout. He has a really good range profile. If I hover over here, he has 24 bow damage, but this is his elite format. He auto upgrades with every single age, so he won't look like this at the very beginning of the game. But he gets these 3 buffs. He can do a maneuver arrow, which will increase, increases the movement speed of nearby units by 0.5 tiles a second for 5 seconds. Attack speed arrow, increasing the attack speed by 50%, or the defense arrow, increasing armor by 3 for 5 seconds. So it's a really interesting mechanic that, hey, we're trying to do some kiting. Well, I'm going to pop the maneuver arrow up, and I'm going to be moving a lot faster now over time for 5 seconds, and then it'll stop. Or, maybe I want to do this and run away from this location, and that falcon will allow me to have sight still while I move from a different location. Release a falcon that provides vision in the area for 30 seconds. Kind of allows you to spy on your enemy if you want to, say, harass them, drop a falcon, wait to see what they do, move other units in, whatever it is. Then, of course, they get the Manjadai, and these are your ranged cavalry units. On the base level, they are not amazing, right? This is only 7 bow attack, and they are not upgraded at all. So if I click over here to this, I can get stuff like this, increase the range damage of the Manjadai and the Khan, and of course, too, we get this veteran upgrade, and you'll see this special menu. So this will further increase the range damage of my horse archers and my Khan, and even more if I've already researched this. So it's worth noting, we're going to go into this just a little bit, but keep in mind, you do need to really worry about researching technology with the Mongols because it's really important. It's one of the biggest boons that they get, and we'll talk about it in just a second here. And of course, their other thing is this traction trebuchet. So they can siege very well. It can do a ton of damage, and on top of it, this traction trebuchet is quite quick on the move. See, it deploys pretty quickly. It's Holland, right? It can move pretty fast. Also, it is in range of this, and it's getting a little bit of a movement speed increase, but still, it is quite the quick little ditty, and it shoots very quick and does a lot of damage to buildings, helping you hit that bounty thing the pillage thing of getting more stone and food by pillaging. But the biggest thing and how it really works here for the Mongols is this: the Uvu. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. You do not harvest stone in a normal fashion. You cannot harvest stone in a normal fashion. See, they will not go and harvest that. you have to build one of these on it, and it will generate stone every like 4 or 3 stone, whatever it is, every second or so. And this is how you get stone. And stone is super important because everything in this aura gets 2 things. 1, increased production, and 2, increased technologies. So let's click, we'll go to the blacksmith. And it's worth noting too that they don't get, the Mongolians don't get a university. All the university technologies are at the blacksmith. So here are all of our researches, right? Our normal ones. Well, because this is in range, you can see right there, in range of the uvu, I get these additional researches. So normally biology, everyone gets, right? 20% health to cavalry. Well, I could just know, and now it's depleted. But this gives me a further increase up to an additional 10%. So if biology has already been in research, increase it by 10%, or just bypass it entirely and do this one. So you can choose, right? So it's a really nice ability here to get off the ground running quickly, because this is what this faction's about, a lot of early aggression. When you start the game, it's the only faction that can make a stable on age 1, and that stable allows you to make early horsemen. Because like I said, this gets increased production. So you can spend stone to make 2 times the normal amount of unit. This is going to allow you to get a lot of horsemen out quickly. You can do this to get a lot of villagers out quickly, or scouts. Whatever it is you want to double up on, you can do it. And this uvu will eventually deplete, as you just saw a second ago. And it also has its own technologies too, right? So this whistling arrows increases the con signal arrow duration by 5 seconds and range by 2 tiles. And then there you go. This will further increase it so that you get more benefits here. So what's important is that as soon as this uvu depletes, you have to go make another one. And as you make another one, the previous one is going to demolish itself. So these guys will finish that, and get as many people in there as possible. And that kind of makes it difficult because, see, that's all now destroyed. Well, every single building has this capability to pack up. Well, we're just going to go ahead and pack up and move into its influence. And we're going to get all the benefits we had before. It's not until age 3 or age 5 age 4, that you get a way to really counteract this. The white stupa white stupa economic landmark here acts as an ovo in the sense that it will help with unit production and research, and it also is going to just make things a lot easier for you because you basically have one you can just pop up wherever you want because it can also pack up. The prayer tent has this ability, monastic shrines. So this won't give you the benefit of research bonuses, but it will give you improved production in their districts even without an ovo. So that is why you won't be building huge, massive empires. You can't even make any kind of wall with the Mongolians. Instead, you'll be moving from stone node to stone node in the early portions of the game. And if you are not quick on your micro and able to really manage, okay, well, I'm kind of coming to a low point here, I'm going to need to start packing up and moving to the next location. I got to start building that location now, whatever it is, and making sure that location is set, is all right, is not going to be just right next to an enemy's expansion. Like, there is a lot to manage with the Mongolians, and it's a way harder faction to jump into because you need to know, okay, hey, I got to get horsemen out immediately, because if they saw that I'm playing Mongolians, and this is in a multiplayer setting, obviously, then they're going to be making spearmen quick. And I have to be able to counter those spearmen, or at least dodge the spearmen and do damage to their production, which is their workers. Against the AI, it's still just as difficult because the AI is going to know, hey, you're Mongolians? Well, I'm going to just focus on making spearmen. So there are a lot of things to deal with the Mongolians, but it is a very rewarding faction once you do learn to finally play it. All in all, that brings our video here to a close. So we covered pretty much every faction in a really quick, down and dirty way, showing off some of their technologies, the way they kind of function on the actual battle map and what have you. But there are still even more complexities to go into, and I will be doing dedicated videos for each faction to help any individual that's coming into the game trying to learn to play better against the AI, or maybe just barely jumping into the competitive multiplayer scene, which is already super competitive and has decades of history behind it. So whether you are a seasoned veteran or someone who's just jumping back into AoE4 for the first time here, hopefully this video gave you a good idea of which faction to jump into, or at least gave you an idea of what barrier of entry to expect with jumping into each faction as you get your hands on Age of Empires come October 28th. If you have any questions or concerns, like, hey, you covered this about the Rus, but I wanted to know a little bit more about maybe how their infantry works or what have you, feel free to leave a comment below, guys. I can give you as much information as I can. I'm not an expert, but I kind of been beating my head against a wall long enough with a lot of the factions to at least understand functionally how they work. But as always, thank you so much for watching here today. Don't forget to comment, like, and or subscribe if you enjoyed the video, but have a good one and take care.